And a lot of times we don't spend enough time remembering that just liking something, just finding something that makes us happy, that's something that a lot of people don't do these days. A lot of times people find reasons to be miserable and they don't even realize they're doing it. Dumpy Sirs wants to go to the Pokemon daycare. No, they don't. They do not. But I wanted to have a bit of a chat for something that I've seen happen a lot. And it's something that seems like really innocuous, right? It's something that we all kind of take for granted after a certain point, but I think it's still important to talk about regardless, because there's always going to be that one person, right, who needs to hear this. How many of you have been told to act your age or abandon kid things, etc.? Like, let's say you like playing video games, or you like playing trading card games, or you like watching cartoons or anime or anything like that, and somebody just says, wow, that shit's for kids. You should not be enjoying that. You should not be watching that. You should not be playing that. Act your age, that whole shit, right? Okay. So, as much as I'd like the thesis of this video to just be a very quick, hey, don't do that, not important. What's important is that we get into the fan art section and then get into the entirety of this particular conversation. Because it's a common one. It's a common refrain that I think we all need to talk about, unfortunately. Yara says, I was told art is for kindergarten, and whoever told you that was wrong and dumb and stupid and wrong. But the first bit of fan art we have is from Satoki Nijikawa. So I decided to try drawing again. I swear to God, Sonic Unleashed, your soundtrack makes me angry sometimes. So I decided to try again with drawing something living, so I let the degen slime out of the bottle. Oh dear. We have one from Mathematical Cabbage that says action pose. That is cool. That is really cool. Yara says it was my German teacher. So it was your teacher that basically just told people how to talk, and that was their... Okay. Red Joker, thank you for redeeming your points for 50,001 channel points were used. But okay. Oh, whoa. The last one we have here is from Living Thrash Can, also known as Zoo Potato. No context given, but I think it looks great. Also, the thighs on this could crush watermelons, and I don't necessarily have a problem with that. As always, everybody, thank you for your fan art submissions. If you want your fan art to be shown in a future video, the best way to do so is to drop it into the fan art section of the Discord. With that said, let's go ahead and get into the topic of childish things. Now, we kind of hear that refrain all the time. You need to grow up, you need to abandon childish things, you need to do X, Y, and Z, but there's a couple of counter arguments to that I think we tend to fall into that aren't super helpful. The first one that we tend to fall into is trying to show examples. Red Joker, thank you for redeeming 50,001 channel points and making me hate you. Oh, whoa. There's a couple of common counter arguments, and if you want to throw some at me in the chat, go ahead, but I can give you two of the most common ones that we tend to do. The first thing we tend to do is we tend to grab media of ours that we don't think is meant for kids and show them to the person to say, hey, this media is for everybody. This media is not just meant for kids. So what's an example of that? Let's say you've got your parent or a friend or a pastor or some idiot telling you you need to abandon things you love, things you cherish, things that are important to you. And let's say their example is video games. So your go-to is to hand them a copy of like Mortal Kombat or Resident Evil or really any M-rated game you can grab. One of the first go-to things that we'll do is we'll hand somebody a piece of media within the thing we enjoy and say, look at this thing, look at it, this is not meant for kids, this is meant for adults. But that kind of ignores a major conversation that would end up happening there. Okay, then I guess you shouldn't be playing kids' games. You should only be playing adults' games. Now, if you enjoy things like Mario, Sonic the Hedgehog, Pokemon, etc., by specifically showing them a piece of media that is designated as for adults, you undercut the part of the argument that says that there is media you can enjoy that is made for kids or made for everyone, and you kind of pigeonhole yourself. But it's a common thing we do. We all do it. We all grab that M-rated piece of media, hand it to somebody, and go, look, not for kids, not realizing that we don't really actually convince a lot of people not to have that disposition towards us when we do. Another, and this happens with anime too, like if somebody sees you watching, Digimon or Pokemon or anything like that, we have a tendency to go grab a more adult anime with blood and gore. We'll hand them like Elfen Lied, or we'll hand them, Parasite or something like that, and they'll just maybe even Evangelion, Berserk, even if it's the god-awful 3D adaptations that run at 12 FPS for some weird reason. We'll show them something like that and be like, aha, look, our medium can be taken seriously too. Look at it. Isn't it just so important? Look at this adult media here. To which we'll probably hear, that's not appropriate for children. That shouldn't be in a cartoon. These are common refrains we gravitate to when we are trying to convince somebody that the media that we enjoy, the things we like, they have as much legitimacy as anything else. So we show them a mature version of something as if that is what they're arguing in the first place. I think a lot of us may be better suited if we have those weird conversations with people where they try to say, this thing you like is for kids. This thing you like is not for you. Why do you enjoy it? Let's say you're a guy and you've watched My Little Pony, despite the fact that that show definitely began to market itself after season 1 to everyone as opposed to just young girls. You had, maybe watched Powerpuff Girls or something like that. A show that was blanketed in the veneer of something for one gender that definitely had plenty for both. Well, more than two, really. But as far as marketing execs are concerned, unless we're making Steven Universe, on the other hand, we got 9 non-binary rocks saving the world. But you run into the problem where you are constantly trying to justify the media you enjoy. The presence of anime for adults does not mean that the argument, the thing you're consuming, the Sonic game, the Mario game, the Pokemon game, isn't for kids. It doesn't undermine that. You know what does, though? Truly and honestly, you know what actually undercuts the entire argument? Simply looking somebody in the face and going, and? I'll get to that conversation again here in a second, but the other argument that we tend to hear against media that is supposedly for kids, the argument a lot of people go to is, well, why do you care? Who am I hurting? Well, nobody's saying you're hurting anybody by consuming that media. Leon Sable, thank you very much for the 95 bits. Nobody's saying you're hurting anybody. Nobody's making that argument. And if you're playing a Sonic game, for instance, nobody's making the argument that a Resident Evil game is now for kids because they're saying video games are for kids. That's not the argument somebody's making. Sometimes we have a tendency of focusing on the exact words somebody is saying and not the intention behind those words. So what they're really trying to do is say that a thing that you like, that you enjoy, that is legitimately an important part of your life, the person is trying to undermine that, undercut that. So let me go ahead and give an example. I love playing Magic the Gathering. It is a very good pastime for me. It's a way that I spend time with my friends, and I like building decks. A friend of mine, looked at the amount of decks that I have and made a comment about how, you've built too many, or I don't want to get into details. None of it's important, but a way to undermine it. And the basic response to something like that, very, very easy, is, but I enjoy it. And throwing the ball back in somebody else's court, throwing the ball back at someone else, tends to be way more effective than trying to spend hours upon hours and a ton of time doing research trying to justify ourselves to people. We don't have to justify ourselves to people half the time. Half the time, we can literally just go, what's your point? Or, I don't care. That thing you enjoy, you shouldn't enjoy it. And? Neat. We save ourselves so much headache. We save ourselves a shit ton of time where instead of trying to find examples of why this thing is totally for adults, when we could just be saying, why does that matter? Why is this not a thing I should enjoy? Throw the ball in somebody's court. This does two things. On the one hand, this does a wonderful job of taking the skin off of our backs. You enjoy a thing that is supposed to be children's media or media for teens, and you're a 30-year-old. You're watching your 15th run through of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and somebody is trying to undermine and undercut it. You can spend hours upon hours upon hours defending the thing. But if you throw the ball in somebody else's court, not only do you take the skin off your back, but you can also do a large bit of good here. Because if somebody is undercutting the things you enjoy, they're probably doing that to somebody else. They are probably spending their time with everybody that they know and say they care about, and they're doing the same thing. Maybe this is the pragmatic view in my head, the utilitarian type of way of thinking that leads me to think that maybe the best answer we can give in situations like that is one that throws the ball at somebody else and makes them justify their bias. A lot of times people don't recognize the bias they have walking into things. Why are you dressed a certain way? Why do you enjoy this certain type of media? Why do you read those kinds of books? Why do you listen to that kind of music? People say those types of things many times from a position of judgment without recognizing that they're even doing it. If you throw the ball back in their court, if you throw that back at them, a lot of times you can cause a domino effect. This person who was potentially touching a lot of other people's lives in a negative fashion now might stop doing that and might even take the exact bit of argumentation, which wasn't really argumentation at all, it's just the Socratic method. Throwing the ball at somebody else, that is just the Socratic method. That's all that is. For those who don't know, the Socratic method is where if somebody says, I believe something, you just go, well, why do you believe that? And eventually, when they say, well, I believe it because X and Y, well, why do you believe X and Y? Why are those factors in you believing that? The idea of the Socratic method is to get to the core reason why somebody believes a thing. A lot of times, we don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about our core beliefs, our core biases. We don't. Using the Socratic method typically puts us in a position to make somebody else evaluate why they've come to the positions that they have. But if somebody is asking that to you and you throw it back at them, there is a chance, not 100%, not everybody is going to be convinced and not everybody is going to engage in introspection, but a lot of times, enough times, one time is better than none to me, you might get somebody to take some time to introspect themselves. Wait, why do I think that this thing is only for kids? Is there something enjoyable in it for me? Have I been denying myself things that I enjoy because they're supposed to be not for me? Do I not want to watch this show because I'm told it's not for my age group? Do I not want to wear this shirt because I'm told it's not for my body type? Do I not want to use this color makeup because it's supposed to be for a different type of person, a different skin shade, a different gender? You won't always do a combination of getting somebody off of your back and cause them to be introspective enough to maybe stop using this line on other people. But for the times it does happen, for the times it does work, it is infinitely more effective than trying desperately to find time to justify a thing we enjoy. Because now we are taking our finite time on this planet to find reasons to justify things we enjoy to other people instead of just fucking enjoying those things. It can cause us to not enjoy those things anymore. Why do you like playing Banjo-Kazooie? Like, that, isn't that a kid's game? Isn't it old? Yeah, but I like playing it. I enjoy it. I sit down, I press buttons, I enjoy the game. That's enough. And a lot of people don't recognize that that's enough. But if you put the ball in their court, and they are now the ones trying to come up with reasons why you shouldn't enjoy a thing over and above the fact that it is just, quote, for kids, you can cause that domino effect. You can not only change a person's mind in the first bit, but maybe get them to do the same thing for somebody else. It is impossible to make the world a better place in total. It is impossible to change the entire world as a single person. But the more people who are focused on positive change, the higher the likelihood that we might actually see some. Yarkor does say in the chat, not sure about that. Most people like that just want to make your life miserable because they are, and at least that's everybody I know that ever did that. And that's understandable. And in fact, I actually kind of agree with that. A lot of times, the people who try to say that you should not enjoy something because it is for a different age demographic, a different gender, a different whatever, a lot of times, those people are kind of miserable, and they are trying to project that misery onto other people. They want other people to be as miserable as they are. But here's the thing. I think a lot of people who do that don't know they're doing that. They aren't aware that that's what they're doing. When you throw that ball back at them, you may have given them the exact tool to recognize they are kind of miserable. They are just trying to make other people not enjoy things anymore. They are just trying to do that. And I'm not saying this because I'm an idealist that wants the world to be better and thinks it can be one person at a time, like in some anime. I say this because this is what happened to me. I used to be that person with a lot of things. The biggest one was Sword Art Online. I hated that show. I still don't like it. I don't. But anytime I would find somebody who enjoyed that show, and I did this for a lot of things, but my two examples will be SAO and Pokemon. When I found somebody who enjoyed that show, I would immediately just hop into my diatribe about how the show was horrible, about how the plot was bad, about how the characters are paper thin, about how the light novel had details that were important that the anime just ignored completely. I would go into that diatribe. I would get into the fact that in, episode 3, they get a resurrection stone that everybody forgets about by episode 14, when the resurrection stone actually mattered. I would go into this whole spiel, not realizing that what I was trying to do was just make other people feel the same way I did. That's a really fucking shitty thing to do. People can enjoy things that aren't great. You don't have to justify the things you enjoy. Say, actually, it's good because I like it and things I like are good. No, sometimes we like crap. Sometimes we like garbage. I love Yu-Gi-Oh! The False-Bound Kingdom. That game is utter garbage. That game is absolute horseshit. It's programmed by a Neanderthal who didn't know how to type on a keyboard and didn't know how to not waste people's time. And I fucking love it. I love that game to pieces. But it's a piece of garbage. I can recognize it's a piece of garbage. There was a time where I felt like I needed to justify liking it. But instead, sometimes I find it's a lot more efficient to just recognize, hey, I like this thing. That's about as far as it has to go. This is something I did as an adult. I did this as a kid as well with Pokemon. When I was in high school, in freshman year, I had stopped playing Pokemon in Generation 3. And I didn't want anything to do with it. And it took me seeing a senior playing through more Gen 3 Pokemon stuff on his Game Boy SP for me to realize, oh, wait a minute, I don't have to abandon this thing I like. So then I got Pokemon Silver on an emulator and started playing it again and realized, oh shit, I still like this stuff. I still enjoy it. I don't have to abandon this thing that is supposedly for kids. I can just accept that it's a thing I enjoy. Who gives a shit who it was made for? That's a marketing team's problem, not mine. If I enjoy it now, that's what matters. And I would spend a lot of time trying to justify why I enjoyed Pokemon again. Oh, well, actually, it has this really competitive format that is really fun. And oh my god, the technology behind Generation 4 and being able to speak into the DS microphone for online play, all this stuff is super great and super important. No, none of it was important. None of that factored into my enjoyment of any of those games. I just enjoyed it because it was Pokemon. It was a part of my childhood that really made me happy. And a lot of times, we don't spend enough time remembering that just liking something, just finding something that makes us happy, that's something that a lot of people don't do these days. A lot of times people find reasons to be miserable and they don't even realize they're doing it. You can get addicted to a certain type of sadness. So I guess the thesis of this video is, don't become that kind of person. Don't feel like you have to spend hours of your life justifying something to somebody else. sometimes it's better to just throw the ball back at them. Hey, I like it because I find it enjoyable. Why does it matter to you? Why is it important to you? At the very least, you might get somebody to go, it's really not that important. I was just wondering. Sometimes that's all that matters. And sometimes you might get that person to actually realize that they're projecting their own sadness onto you, their own misery onto you. And if that's the case, you may be the reason that person doesn't fall down a well of self-deprecation, sadness, and misery. So, I don't know. This is just a video that I've been wanting to do for a little bit, because every single time that I cover the NIFB specifically, they have this fetish for saying that certain types of media are for kids. And it got me to realizing political extremism has this fetish with putting people in those boxes where they feel like they either have to justify themselves or each other, or have to make other people miserable. Sometimes it's better to just focus on the things that make you happy. Sometimes that's enough. It'd probably be a good idea if we recognize that more often than not. But let me know what you thought in the comment section below about stuff like this whole conversation. I know it's kind of heavy, but no more so than anything else I've covered on this channel. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you haven't already, and as always, everybody, enjoy what you're going to enjoy. It's fine. Insert end of video tagline here.